This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday morning with me, Scribelight. Hope you're all doing well this morning. My brain's still waking up a little bit, so if I seem a little foggy, that might be why. So what are we up to today? Well, you might remember a couple of weeks back we did a two-parter where we looked at embrace race and how to instill a positive racial identity in your kids. Took a break from that kind of thinking for a couple of weeks, but here we are again, and I came across a very happy, fun, oh boy, we're going to be superheroes, speak up for kids about diversity and inclusion. And on a Sunday morning, hearing from someone how to speak to children about an important subject seems like it will be something I could handle on a Sunday morning with my brain more than anything else. And I love to find out what the current thinking is in educating children on how to look at themselves and others for great justice. But before we get into that, who is joining me this morning, this Sunday morning? Matt Barnes, good morning. Jaeger Pony, Jamie Melquist, Ryan R., Hell Triangle, Kiever Dam, Reject, Arc 210, Check Your Logic, Ebony Williams, This is Kyle, Mike Savage, Ost San, Jake Tungseth, Jack Frost 7548. Boy, that's latest in a long line. Bridget, Psionic Dreams, Lexi Mad, Spud Gun. Who else? Is that everybody? I think that's everybody I see. Oh, Short Line 614, Brittany Holland. Good morning to you all. But before we get into the today's episode, such as it is, I would direct your attention to the pinned chat. Boy, oh boy. Terminology aphasia. Isn't it great? The pinned chat at the top of the chat window. Our friend His Kitten, a longtime viewer and supporter of both my channel and several of the other channels in the Lords of the Night family, is in need of some help. And so if you have a moment, if you take a look at that GoFundMe to try to help out Kitten and her family, it would be much appreciated. As well, if you scroll up a little bit, for those of you that can, Kiever Dam has posted the GoFundMes for both Weebo Jones and Angry Illinoisian. Weebo's recovering from having been bitten by a dog, and Angry Illinoisian is seeking help after an injury, which workers' compensation apparently will not cover or won't cover very much. So, hope you all have an opportunity to look at those, and if you can help, please do. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into this. I have no idea who this person is. I just saw this, and it looks like it's some kind of organization, but I'm always interested to hear about how best to educate children on such subjects, as I've done an entire long, lengthy series of things called Curriculum of Fear. If you're not aware of my series Curriculum of Fear, you can find a playlist on my channel. Beware, it's rather disturbing, because even videos from some odd years ago now seem like they might have just been plucked out of stuff going on today, which tells you how long and how ingrained some of this stuff is. But not knowing what our speaker is going to say today, perhaps I'll be surprised. I am happy to be surprised. So let's find out. I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will proceed.
Hello, thank you for joining me today for this Speak Up for Kids webinar entitled How to Talk to Your Kids About Diversity and Inclusion.
I am raring to go. You guys hear that? Let me know. Kiever Dam says sounds good. Let's see. Spoonie the Rebel, good morning. Kanan Crystal, Decode. Want to get a couple more in here before we move on. Sounds good, says everybody. All right, so let's find out how to talk to our kids about diversity and inclusion.
I'm Dr. Randon Hall,
a
sports medicine physician and pediatrician here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, a doctor. of sports medicine and pediatrician. Okay.
I would like to start today by acknowledging our presentation sponsor, Southwest Human Development.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to skip over a little bit of this because I don't want to spend too much time with any incidentals. I want to get right into it if I can. All right. So let's.
Hi, I'm Dr. Randon Hall, a pediatrician and sports medicine specialist here in Phoenix, Arizona.
So wait, you're live streaming a video of yourself. Okay. Interesting.
Thank you for tuning in to the American Academy of Pediatrics Speak Up for Kids, Ask the Expert series.
Oh, okay. So you're an expert. That's good. As always, I have not watched this ahead of time, so I don't know what we're in for. But I always like listening to people who comport themselves as experts in whatever field they're in, because that at least tells me that they are positioning themselves in the mainstream of thinking, if you know what I mean.
I have the pleasure of discussing a timely and important topic, how to talk to your kids about diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
I should first say that although I have some formal training in this area, I'm not an expert in all things that encompass diversity and inclusion.
So should you be educating or advising people on how to talk to children about such things? But okay, I appreciate the disclaimer at least. That's intellectual honesty you don't often see these days.
However, what I can contribute is my expertise in talking to children and adolescents about difficult topics.
Why do you have expertise in difficult topics? What constitutes a difficult topic?
With the 15 minutes we have, I would love to focus on an approach to starting a conversation with your children, particularly on topics of diversity and inclusion.
Well, that's what we're here for, so I'm all ears.
I find the best way to start to teach something is to make sure we are all on the same page in terms of what is important and why it is important.
I agree. I'd also appreciate some definition of terms as we proceed, because oftentimes I don't get those. But all right, what is important?
So my definition of diversity is the differences that make humans unique.
The differences that make humans unique. Okay, well, that is a very, very broad definition. All right.
Which includes physical attributes as well as non-physical characteristics.
Yes.
So that might be something like the color of your skin, physical features you may have, or disabilities you may have, what your assumed gender is, what your age is, even how you might talk.
Anything of, I don't know, personal merit, individual characteristics, knowledge, attitude, behavior, compassion, so on. Anything like that is actually determinative of someone's character?
Additionally, things that are non-physical characteristics might be, what your sexual orientation is.
Yes, that could be one thing that contributes to diversity. Anything else?
What your socioeconomic status is.
Yes, that could also. Anything else?
Your ideals, your beliefs.
Yes.
Even down to what type of food you might eat.
Yes, okay. All right, yes. Your definition is accurate in its breadth. I'll give you that much.
Inclusion is the acceptance that these differences exist and respecting them as a part of the larger community that we all live, work, and play in.
Well, I guess it would depend on context. I mean, if my ideals drastically contrast with someone else's ideals, like say someone else's ideals include breaking into people's houses and taking their stuff, I might not feel all that inclusive towards that, but I'm looking at extreme examples. But then we are talking about educating children, so bringing up the most extreme examples is probably the best way to go. But Okay, yes, living in a community and just sort of live and let live. That's my idea of inclusion in a sort of abstract sense, I suppose, if I have to have one.
The why is really something bigger than just us as individuals.
Uh-huh.
Including a diverse set of opinions, strengths, and values helps to create a society that is more understanding, empathetic, and equitable for all of its members.
Conceivably, but yes, I will agree that entertaining ideas without having to accept them and also not vilifying people who have a different perspective on the world than you do, that isn't, drastically harmful or something, uh, is a healthy way to proceed. Sure. Okay.
I think the key to any serious discussion is having a general age-appropriate framework.
Okay.
In this particular case, I think the framework revolves around the question, what are you trying to accomplish?
That is a very good question. What are you trying to accomplish by trying to educate children on the modern concepts of diversity and inclusion? What exactly is your goal? Because when I was growing up, well, this is the thing. And over the course of the last 5 years doing these videos, I have many, many times tried to think back to incidents with my parents or peers or otherwise where I ever had to confront these things. And I didn't grow up in a 100% white community or something. There was plenty of kids in my school and so on that weren't. And so it just didn't come up in my mind. And the times that it did, when as I got further along in my education, and I started seeing videos and historical things from the 1960s and the civil rights movement, all of that informed me at the time that that way of behaving was A, wrong, and I'm talking about being racist and segregation, uh, and B, was also antiquated. It was old thinking. It was like ancient times kind of thinking for my little childhood brain. So it just didn't even really come up. And I just took on people as they were. I mean, when I was a kid, I was more interested in how people were treating me versus what they looked like, but maybe that was just me. So, yes, what are you trying to accomplish in getting this technical, I guess? Instead of just saying, a little kid says, why does that kid look different than I do? And you say, well, they look like their mommy and their daddy. Like you look like me and your father or mother or whatever. They look like their father and their mother. And hair color, eye color, skin color. It's all meaningless. It's about how you treat each other and how you treat yourself. The end, I would hope. But okay, what are you trying to accomplish?
So let's go through a few general age groups step by step.
Mm-hmm.
The first age group I'll use is the early school age. And so that's really preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade in this particular framework.
Okay, so we're looking like 4 to 6, or maybe 3 to 6. I'm not quite sure when preschool starts. Is that 3 or 4? Something like that. Okay, so 4 to 6 years old. Maybe 7. Second grade, I'm trying to remember, was I 7 and 6? Something like that.
And I think the main goal here is really to understand and get children to understand the concept of differences and accepting those differences. In other words, simply showing empathy.
See, part of me thinks that this doesn't need to come up unless the child is somehow misbehaving towards others in these regards. I mean, I can understand a certain amount of being proactive, but just letting kids grow up and interact and learn their own lessons. Does a lecture about this ahead of there being an issue, is that really necessary? And I guess that goes for so many other things, but in this particular case?
There's a lot of strategies that you can use here. You can make it more of a game or an activity. So something you might try is the differences game or what makes you you.
Isn't there a danger in dwelling on difference and pointing out difference instead of just allowing it to exist without making a big deal out of it? I mean, if you never point out to a kid that differences like that matter in any other way than that person's just an individual, rather than making someone sensitive to the subject, isn't that a better way to go? I mean, I'm not a child psychologist, so I have no idea professionally, but I'm just thinking it's sort of like the reverse Streisand effect, right? It's like I proceed through the day and I never think about assessing someone on the differences of their appearance or something insofar as their character. But then somebody comes along and says, you need to pay attention to these things. And then I can't help but pay attention to these things. Something like that.
And these are things you can try while riding in the car or waiting in line for something.
What?
And really just kind of asking the different family members or the different people in the group, what makes you different, or what do you think makes you a different person than the other person?
I am my imagination is thinking of that in a very, very awkward confrontation. You're sitting there in line for McDonald's, kids in the back seat playing with their toys or something. And you're just like, hey, Jimmy, what makes you different from that person over there? Like some kind of weird identitarian I spy with my little eye game.
Or, referring to maybe your neighbors or some friends from school or friends around the home. What makes another person or family different than our family or from another person's family?
Why focus on difference? I mean, I think the whole idea of having a waiting in line conversation with your small child about these things is ridiculous to begin with. Why not focus on commonalities? Why not sort of see and focus on the connections between us and not the differences, right? Even though difference between people is a commonality, but I mean, the family across the street, well, they have a mom and a dad and a kid and a dog, just like we have a mom and a dad and a kid and a cat, that kind of thing. Why focus on difference? Why is difference so necessary to focus on? Why not elevate and celebrate the common denominators among us?
I think that's a good strategy to just kind of get children thinking about the fact that people are different.
Again, why? Why do we need to think about people being different? Accepting difference, I think, comes from also, and more importantly, accepting sameness, mutually shared experiences and situations. Building empathy because you can relate to someone else and build on those experiences and connections. Why focus on difference?
And then also thinking about what those differences mean for you or what those differences mean for that person. So, for example, if your hair type is different from another person's hair type,
an issue you have no problem with, of course.
What does that difference mean for you?
Hey, little Jimmy, your hair is brown and Billy's hair is blonde. What does that mean to you? And little Jimmy's answer is probably going to be, I don't know, which is about as necessary and as vital a reaction as you really need for something like that, really. Okay.
What does that mean in terms of how you interact with your body and different features that you have? And being able to fully understand how that relates to other people as well.
Okay, I am genuinely confused right now. I'm going to back up slightly. I want to make sure I cut him off after the hair thing. I want to make sure what?
How you interact with your body and...
No, sorry, I didn't go back far enough. I want to get that hair thing in. Sorry. Okay.
What differences mean for you or what those differences mean for that person. So, for example, if your hair type is different from another person's hair type.
If my hair type is different from another person's hair type.
What does that difference mean for you?
What should it mean for me?
What does that mean in terms of how you interact with your body and different features that you have?
What does my hair type have to do with interacting with my body? And Especially if we're talking about, I mean, you're putting this in the context of speaking to kindergarten to second graders. What? Thank you, Lancelot. 652. Isn't this going to lead to the opposite of what he wants? Mom says you're different, so I have to treat you different, sort of thing. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. This constant refrain, this drumbeat of notice difference, notice difference, notice difference, as though it's supposed to have some kind of value. And he's talking about it right now in a very weird and awkward way, I think. Yeah, I mean, you want to build empathy. Empathy comes from being able to relate to somebody else, not dwelling on what separates you. So why not just, and this is the fundamental point, isn't it? That there are certain differences in life that are irrelevant when interacting with someone or assessing them as a person, as an individual, and their character, like hair type, like skin color. These things say nothing about who a person is. What connects us as human beings, more often than not, is situation and experience, right? So two people from a similar socioeconomic background, regardless of what they look like, are probably going to have more in common, both in experience and philosophy. And maybe there are differences therein that one could, benefit from the other in, right? It's like, I went through this thing and I did X to try to get through it. And the other person says, well, I went through something similar, but I did this and this worked for me, right? What does any of that have to do with your hair type or your skin type or anything else? Nothing. So yeah, this is all, as my father often says, bass-ackwards in my mind. But okay, interacting with my body, as it just sounds so creepy.
And being able to fully understand how that relates to other people as well.
Okay. If my hair type is the same as someone else's hair type, what does that inform me about that person? All right. I mean, even in my, if I can try to regress my mind back to being a preschool to second grader, what is that supposed to tell me about that other person? I hope that's what you're following that up with here, because I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
And I think really just reminding them that differences are just that. They're differences, and it's okay to be different.
Is it though? Because you're more than implying that I'm supposed to assess someone on their appearance. In this first and primary example you've given us, I'm supposed to assess someone on their appearance. Is that a healthy way to look at the world?
I think one thing to remember in this particular age group is that kids are going to say offensive things.
Yes, I suppose that is possible. Yes. And so what is the best way to react to this?
They just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay for that to happen as long as you use it as a learning opportunity.
Yes. If some little kid blurts out something completely inappropriate, first and foremost, depending on the context, it'll probably be hilarious. And then afterwards, you take the kid aside and say, no, that was rude, or something to that effect. Yeah. But of course, then where did they hear this offensive thing before?
So it's okay to apologize, but don't get upset with them.
Yeah.
It's just a great time to remind them that everyone is different and that's okay.
Well, okay. Do you have an example of what you're talking about here? I mean, and I know it would be terrible to have to say a offensive word on YouTube. And trust me, I understand the risks of that. But what do you mean? I mean, examples, active examples. You've given us one kind of weird one, which didn't really serve your argument very well. But could you give us some more, please, as the not expert, but you're here as an expert?
For example, in clinic, lots of time, I have young kids telling me that, hey, you don't have any hair.
An observation of fact. Is that offensive?
And they're right. I don't have any hair.
Yeah.
But I use it as an example to say, we're all different.
Yeah.
You might have brown hair and you might have black hair, and I don't have any hair. And that's okay because we're all different.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't have the context. Is the kid like doing it in a mocking way or something? Because then you could say, that's rude or whatever. That I asked for an example. I got an example. I don't know if that really supports your point or not.
I think the second age group I'll use is the late elementary to early middle school group.
Oh, so the next age group you'd use is the next chronological age group from the one you started with? Wow, okay.
And in here, we really want to build on those themes of differences, but we want to add in some components of societal norms and what's acceptable language and behavior in society.
Okay, so at this point, you want to tone/word police. All right, well, you tell me, how are the kids supposed to behave? What's acceptable?
So one of the areas that I first start with is using appropriate and respectful language.
And I've asked this multiple times on multiple streams. Where in this equation are the parents? Right? Is this meant to educate parents specifically? Do you think that parents, just as a natural course of being alive, haven't done some of this work in some fashion up to the point of late elementary school age? I mean, you understand the kids are living somewhere outside of school most of the rest of their days, correct? Doesn't this seem like a little superfluous?
So using the appropriate term for a group of people or a particular person that you may be referring to. So for example, your child may refer to another child in class as the kid who can't speak very well.
Well, is he the kid that can't speak very well?
And you might just say, well, actually, the better way to describe that is someone who has a speech problem or someone who has a stutter.
You think that's better somehow? Can't speak very well, speech problem or stutter. 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other in my mind, but what do I know?
I think also focusing on the proper terminology or even the medical terminology for a particular condition would be appropriate.
Sure. I mean, if it's the real medical whatever, you can try to teach your kids some vocabulary words. Okay.
So maybe trying to move away from, that child has special needs, and really just being direct and saying, well, that child has a condition called Down syndrome, or that child has a condition called autism.
Okay, so you don't like the term special needs, which is an umbrella term in the first place to sort of generalize a lot of things, and you're getting specific. Okay. And
making your child more familiar with those terms.
Sure. Expand vocabulary and understanding. Great. What? I'm already lost.
And I think here also bringing up the concept of person-first language. So this is a little bit debatable in some circles, but the concept really is referring to the individual first.
And I have sirens in the background, so I can't do much about that. So I'll wait them out on the off chance they're being picked up. Okay. Individual first. Well, I think the more important thing here, and he hasn't really mentioned it yet, is that, and I don't know if he will, is that, yes, you can understand that someone has, let's say, a learning disability or a speech impediment or something like that. The big takeaway that should be there is this does not define the person, right? Just possessing whatever this is, disability or otherwise, does not define the person. How do they treat others? How do they treat themselves? How do they behave, etc.? Okay, that's where you want to like ease in there with these differences are effectively irrelevant, right?
And then whatever condition they may have, second. So instead of saying a child is an autistic child, you would refer to them as a child who happens to have autism.
Or maybe I could refer to them as Billy. Maybe I could refer to them by their name and not make a big deal out of something that says nothing about who the kid is. Maybe. You know, this whole identity movement oftentimes seems to forget the idea that we all have names.
I think this age group is a good time to discuss stereotypes as well.
Oh, good.
And so maybe starting out, what is a stereotype?
Yeah, let's teach kids stereotypes. Let's teach kids things to assess someone with on the basis of their appearance or other things. Yeah, let's push those forward all on our own. We got to get them in there before somebody else does.
And how I word it is assuming that someone has a certain trait based on some other factors that may or may not be related. So you may discuss what common stereotypes are out there, or what stereotypes your child may encounter, or some that you may have encountered yourself.
Why not just wait to see if those ever become prevalent in a child's life / vocabulary or otherwise, and then be reactive so the kid can have some context of their own and not try to preempt everything? You're not going to be able to cushion your kid ahead of time from every evil of the world. Sometimes they're going to have to face it first, think about it, and then ask questions that you have to answer as a parent. Isn't that more organic? Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
As long as those are age appropriate.
Well, what's age appropriate? You know, I mean, imagine this, if you will. Which would be a better scenario, do you think? Okay. Little Billy is about to enter second grade. And so I take time ahead of him entering second grade to educate him on all the stereotypes I can think of about what people look like, or how people live, or this, that, or the other. And then Billy goes into second grade looking at all the other kids and assessing them on the basis of these stereotypes that I've just gone to such an effort to put into his brain before he's actually interacted with individual people. All right, that's scenario one. How about scenario two? Billy goes into second grade. I release him to the wild to learn and make mistakes on his own. Billy interacts with kids of all types, of all shapes, of all looks, and so on. And Billy gets to make friends with or relate to kids on the basis of who they are and not what they are. And then, sometime in the middle of second grade, Billy is confronted by another kid about a stereotype that belittles or denigrates a friend of his he has already made. And Billy understands this stereotype doesn't apply because this kid that he knows doesn't act like that, or live like that, or behave like that. And then Billy comes to me, the parent, and says, you know, Jimmy Smith said this thing about Annie, and that was mean. And like, you're right, it was mean, because Annie's your friend, isn't she? Like, yeah. Well, then Jimmy Smith doesn't know what he's talking about, does he? Yeah. Imagine that scenario. Imagine actually learning through life and having to interact and make your own decisions, choices, and revelations. And then having your parent there to supplement and assist as these things happen in life. Golly gee. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. What is this merit that you speak of, Scribe? I know, right? Well, we have to preempt merit. We have to preempt the notion of merit. We have to start off first and foremost and be proactive about pointing out differences that say nothing about a person. Never mind who they are. It's about what they are, first and foremost. Okay, as you may know, I am not a parent. All right. I have been a child raised by parents, but I am not a parent. Maybe I am 100% off base here. I don't know. So, for those of you in the audience that are parents, if my idea, my second scenario, sounds worse than the first scenario, by all means, leave a comment, correct me, leave your own experience with such things. I'd appreciate it. Like, this is just my sort of abstract perspective on the thing.
I think remembering that kids may hear words or stereotypes that you don't discuss at home, and to be prepared that they may know things that you weren't aware that they know?
Yeah, well, welcome to, I think, just being a parent in general, because you're not monitoring them 24/7, unless you're a potentially very unhealthy parent.
So I use what's called motivational interviewing techniques, or just open-ended questions, to really get a feel for what it is they know and what they're aware of. So asking, have you heard any words at school that we don't use at home, rather than saying, do you know about this or that? Or maybe I heard this word on a song or TV. Have you ever heard that before? And
Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness.
And get them to kind of think they're teaching you about it. And then I think the last stage is this middle to high school age.
Really? Is that the next stage? The next stage chronologically in education? Okay.
And here, really the focus is on not so much direct teaching, but more on helping them interpret what it is they are exposed to on a daily basis.
Yes, I think that's called parenting.
And this is really where I think the open-ended questions, as well as the motivational interviewing, is absolutely critical.
Hey, how was your day today, my young son? What did you learn in school? Did you make any new friends? And just let the kid talk and share what he wants to share. It doesn't have to be this. Why? What is your goal? Wasn't that the question at the top of this? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve here?
So I kind of refer to it as curious questioning.
Curious questioning? What is a question if not the embodiment of curiosity? It's that little squiggle with a dot at the end of the sentence. Redundancy, Department of Redundancy. Come on.
So you may just approach a particular topic or a particular subject with just kind of an open-ended, I don't really know all the ins and outs of this. Can you tell me more? And see what answers you get back.
How was your day today? What did you learn in school? Did you make any new friends? Tell me about your day. Leave it as open-ended as possible. And just see what the kid says.
So you may be able to just say, hey, what is going on with this Black Lives Matter movement?
That's an open-ended question. Yeah, let's whittle ourselves down to talking about a very specific socio-ideological movement in the country right now based around race and police brutality. Hey, it's an open-ended question. I'm just curious.
Like, what is that? What do you know about that? Or simply asking, hey, what do you guys know about all the different pronouns of he?
Open-ended question, guys. Just broad topics. Hey, just the really 30,000-foot level sort of questions. Yeah. Okay. Really?
She, they, we didn't talk really about that when we were in school.
Yeah, no, we really didn't talk about that when we were in school. And most of us grew up just fine and productive, healthy individuals. Yeah, most of us didn't talk about that stuff because it was, I can't even conceive of that ever having come up at all in my growing up. This is the ramifications of the Tumblrizing of our society and our youth in the last 10, 15 years. It is incredible. I mean, just as trying to be pragmatic about it on an objective level, it's incredible how quickly all of this stuff has rushed into the veins of our society, or at least the zeitgeist and social media. But let's keep going with those broad questions, those open-ended questions.
And so, what are you guys talking about regarding these pronouns, and just getting your child to kind of open up about what they know. With
no, not getting your child to open up, interrogating your child and putting first and forward ideas and concepts that may or may not be important to them or anyone around them. You are injecting specific sociological ideologies and perspectives into the conversation of your own volition. You're not letting your kid just experience what they're going to experience and grow up. You're interrogating them and highlighting things that you want them to focus on. And rather than focusing on commonalities between us, you're bringing up very decisive and divisive subjects. You are doing this
without kind of really aggressively questioning them.
How is that not aggressive? Okay. Aggression can take many forms, right? Right? You can be hostile, you can be angry, you can raise your voice, you can shake your fist, etc. Yeah, okay. Or kid comes home from school and he can say, "Hey, Billy, what do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement?" What if Billy's answer doesn't please you on that subject? I would be curious to know from our speaker if you actually brought up the Black Lives Matter movement or pronouns, and the kid's response is, "I don't care." What would be the next thing out of the, hypothetical parent's mouth at that point, or what should be, right? Or let's say little Billy is either dismissive or derisive about those things. Just says, I think it's stupid, or I think they're irrelevant. I don't care. What happens then? I'd be curious to know.
Another example is if you're watching a TV show or a movie and asking, what is it about? I heard them talking about a particular thing in the movie. Do you know anything about that, or are you familiar with that?
As open-ended a concept as that is, that can be perfectly fine. After a movie or a TV show, engaging with your children as to what they watched, what they learned, and so on. Yes, that can be very beneficial and educational. So until we get some qualifiers here, I'll go along with that one, sure.
And you can use other examples, from social media and such.
Yeah, there's a big red flag. Yeah, let's. As much as I use social media, I in no way, shape, or form endorse social media as a learning tool for children.
That you saw, and maybe just question them a little bit about that.
Yeah, again, okay, you can't avoid social media these days. So being an engaged parent and talking to your kids about what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and so on, perfectly legit. That's fine. You want to be involved. You don't want to be completely detached. You want to have some. Oh, but here's the thing too. Probably, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that a child's exposure to social media, especially in those formative years, should be next to nothing. And that's on the parents, because there is endless amounts of inappropriate garbage that should probably not enter the minds or eyeballs of small children. Not trying to be a Puritan about it, but let's be honest. Kids should not be exposed to some of the stuff. I'm not trying to sound like an old fuddy-duddy here, but man, if I had access to some of the stuff I see just at a glance on Twitter on a daily basis when I was like 10 or 11 or something, holy cow, I would have a warped mind at this stage of the game, I think.
I think this is also an important time frame to really develop executive functioning and decision-making skills in regards to
Freudian slip. Were you going to say regurgitating? Okay, executive level brain function. You're going to instill this, okay?
Diversity and inclusion.
Okay, what constitutes executive level decision making when it comes to diversity and inclusion that you're going to instill into a child somewhere between the range of preschool and high school? Or are we on the high school part now? So at this late date in a child's development is when you're going to start instilling in them executive thinking. What?
So really challenge them with questions that make them think.
Oh, yeah, because at no point in their lifetime to that stage would you ever have done such a thing.
So just the other day,
Yeah.
me and my daughter, we were
Yes.
waiting at the bus stop.
Okay.
And I just ask open-ended questions like, hey, do you know anything about what's going on, at the US-Mexico border?
How old is your daughter? Because I'll be honest, I wasn't paying with any close attention the events outside of my little bubble of the world, honestly, until after 9/11. And I know that sounds all cliche, but it's absolutely true. My idea of the larger world beyond my borders really didn't kick in until that happened. And then I was paying attention to a lot of stuff I never would have before. So, okay. What's going on at the US-Mexico border? I don't know. What is going on at the US-Mexico border?
Do you know anything about illegal immigration?
Mhm.
And just kind of feeling out what it is that she's aware of.
Illegal immigration? I don't know if that terminology is acceptable anymore.
And then really digging deep and asking questions that may kind of play both sides, or just getting them to think about if they are feeling strongly about one particular topic, kind of asking them to think and put themselves in another person's shoes.
I don't know. It just doesn't sound organic to me. If you're driving your kid to school and you're listening to the morning news radio and they bring up the subject of X, and then that's a good time to, sort of say, what do you know about this? Something like that. Just querying your kids on things like this. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of benefit to be had in encouraging your kids to think beyond their bubble. I don't see anything wrong with that inherently. But I don't know. Just standing at the bus stop. What do you think about the US-Mexico border? Is it relevant to the moment? I don't know.
So in this particular case, I would ask her, hey, do you think it's right? Do you think it's right to come into a country illegally?
Yeah. Okay. Now, just backing up a little bit, this has nothing to do with diversity and inclusion as you described it at the beginning. Socio-political issues, like larger world issues, that could actually be beneficial and educational depending on the circumstances. So sure. What does this have to do with someone's hair type?
And then asking, well, can you see why people might do that? Can you see why they might choose to make that decision?
Okay, so you're pushing a particular interpretation or value system on it? That's your prerogative as a parent. But again, what does this have to do with diversity and inclusion? Law versus illegality, domestic policy versus international policy. These are high-minded topics. They're perfectly fine. Where are we going again with this?
And then really pushing deep and saying, well, what would we do if we were in that situation?
Uh-huh.
How would we handle that? And
I don't know. How would you handle that? Would you encourage your daughter to break the law? Would you encourage your daughter? Where are we? What are we doing here now?
I think that really got her to think and open up about something without kind of just asking her in an aggressive way.
Yeah, well, you're talking about policy. You're talking about, again, international and or domestic policy, immigration policy. You're talking about high-minded sort of governmental issues about the world. Okay, that's fine. We've taken such a departure from what you were talking about 5 minutes ago. I'm just kind of getting whiplash. What does any of this have to do with relating one to another, assessing people on their hairstyle, looking at difference? Like what? Like the situation they're in that country versus this country? Okay, well, you want to talk about the the economic situations or the social situations between nation states? So that's some high-minded stuff. What has that got to do with hair type or any of the things that you listed earlier? Socioeconomic status, skin color, whatever.
And then scenarios, role playing, I think, is really critical at this age group and can really help them kind of put themselves in a situation before they are actually in it.
Sure.
So an example we've used at the house is, you're in a situation where a friend or someone makes an insensitive comment to you, but it's in private.
So we've gone from immigration policy back to name calling. Okay.
And how are you going to handle that? And how might you address it with them? Or, will you ignore it? And just kind of seeing how your child reacts to this difficult situation.
Well, here's the thing. You're not going to need to do any role playing in that regard because it's going to happen. That is going to happen amongst children growing up. You don't need to preempt it. You don't need to think about it ahead of time. It is going to happen. It's just an inevitability. So, okay.
And kind of coaching them and helping them. It's kind of silly, but I do think it works quite well.
Yeah, it is kind of silly. I think it's also, again, not to belabor a particular word, it's also superfluous. These are experiences that children are going to encounter inevitably. Okay, it's just going to happen. And when they come home and you ask them, how was your day at school today? What did you learn? Did you make any new friends? If they volunteer this information on their own, or more likely than not, if a teacher sends a note home, or this becomes an issue between your kid and the other kid, I don't know, dude. You've wavered all over the place on what you're trying to do here. You said, what are you trying to achieve at the top of this? I'm still not quite sure what you are trying to achieve. Helicopter parenting, preemptive, visual discriminatory thoughts. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. To be fair, name calling hasn't changed in politics. That's true too. That's true too. It's gonna happen, especially these days. You want to talk about social media? Oh, geez.
So, in conclusion, here, I think the first important thing you need to do is make sure you're dealing with the particular definitions. Everybody's on the same page.
I am decidedly not on the same page after this, 15-minute presentation or whatever. You started out talking about visual differences, orientation, which again, or if I didn't say it before, I really should have. What the heck does that have to do with talking to preschool kids? But anyway, yeah, you went from visual differences to, federal policy and then back to name calling. What are you trying to do?
In regards to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then you want to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish for each age group. So remembering that different children have different experiences and different age groups may be able to comprehend things a little bit differently.
You don't say. Who is this for? I mean, I understand, parents look for guidance at what to do in certain situations and things all the time. But by the time you've reached junior high as a parent, either you've got it down in a healthy way or you don't, I suppose. Kids learn this stuff on their own. You have to engage yourself as the parent. Who is this guide for? Talking to your kids about diversity and inclusion. Yeah, I'm bewildered.
And then I think it's definitely important to assume that kids know more about a topic than what you've taught them.
Uh-huh.
Assume that they've heard things from other kids at school, particularly kids who have older siblings, is an important thing as well. And then remembering that kids learn a lot from watching and copying.
You don't say, really? Good Lord. Thank you, Metal Murder. It is for people to laugh at, like us. I got to wonder. I really do. It's like, a lot of this stuff is just, oh, by the way, legit low talker. Hello. You learn this stuff by raising a child, right? Monkey see, monkey do. Like repetitive. Like, here's how you put the ring on the stick, little baby. And then they copy it. I mean, most of this stuff is just, I suppose if you're talking to someone who has never had a concept of parenting in the general sense, I guess this might be a revelation in its basic form.
And so model good behavior when you're in a setting where you can show them how to approach a situation.
Oh my gosh, be a role model as a parent? What? I can't believe it. What an idea. Thank you, Zero Depressive Future History Book. At the beginning of the 21st century, humanity went through a strange phase. It's just, oh man. There's a quote from H.P. Lovecraft. Let me actually quote it directly. Let me get it correctly here so I can not screw it up. Here it is. One second here. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. I think the advent of the internet and the deluge of information, good, bad, nonsense, and otherwise, is driving us all a little batty. Most especially in the last 2 years, where we're all cooped up and have nothing much else to do but, interact with the world through the internet and social media. Yeah. But who am I talking, right? Or who am I to talk, I should say. My brain's leaving me. I'm a part of it now.
Professionally or maturely. And then I think the curious questioning is an awesome technique.
Curious questioning.
To find out where your child is in this process and understanding the differences, dealing with some of the difficult situations that they may be in terms of other children not being able to quite be as mature as they are.
Children are not mature. That's why they're children.
In this understanding.
Well, I mean, I was a pretty mature kid, but I was mostly just sort of quiet and stoic.
But I think it's also important not to overdo it.
Where is the line of demarcation between not overdoing it and looking at my kid after they come home from school? It's like, what do you know about Black Lives Matter? What?
You want to meet your child where they are.
I'm the parent, so they don't have a choice but to meet me where they are. So long as they're in my custody, I suppose. They have to come home from school. To me, the parent. I have no other place to meet them but where they are. Thank you again, Johnny Hellcat. Curious question, Mom. Where's Dad? A curious question.
And build up from there.
Yeah.
A lot of children may not be ready to take on such deep discussions.
Yeah, you think? Oh, Black Lives Matter, pronouns, the border crisis. I mean...
And just start with where they are and build up from there.
Yeah, what are you learning in school today? How's about that? You want to meet them where they are. Am I just off my nut here when I say, hey, little Billy, how was school today? What did your teacher teach you? Did you make any new friends? Is that trinity of questions not enough to elicit something like what our speaker is talking about on a daily basis from your child? Open-ended, broad questions of curiosity, find out what they're learning in school, what they were taught, and then build off of that in the conversation. Like, well, we learned today about animals. Like, oh, what's your favorite animal? My favorite animal is a cow. Oh, I've seen lots of... What?
I think it's really important to recognize that these techniques can be used with lots of different topics.
You don't say. Broad questions about the world or experience can be used with a lot of different topics. You're right. So why specify Black Lives Matter or pronouns or the border crisis?
So it's really important to try it, test it, and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's called parenting and learning, because no matter how many books you read or guides you get, but learning how to parent is an individual experience. I've learned this from so many different parents telling me how they raise their kids, and somehow it's all a little bit different.
Because I think you will really find that kids respond well when they are approached in a way that gives them the sense that they are teaching you as much as you are teaching them, and you're treating them like a mature individual.
Yeah, imagine that. Is this for people who are not yet parents? You know, setting aside all the ideological subject matter and subtext, is this for people who are not yet parents? Because it seemed to me how to talk to your kids presupposes one already possessing children. So
thanks a lot for your attention.
Yeah,
I'll be definitely around to answer questions.
This is a pre-recorded thing, so all
right. Well, I hope that was useful.
Why didn't you just do the whole thing live stream? I didn't see any edits in there. What?
For everyone, we do have some questions here.
Okay.
And I'll try to answer those.
Are they curious questions? Because I don't know if I can handle questions that aren't curious.
Best I can. I want to make sure that my video is what you guys can see.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
So just want to double check that.
All right. Live TV. Sure. Yeah, I get it. Live TV. I'm with you there. I understand.
So folks that are helping with the video, I just want to make sure that you know, my video is what everybody can see. But I'll go ahead and start answering some questions here for you guys.
Yeah.
So one of the questions was, how would you handle it if you find out your child is excluding someone in school because they are different?
How would you handle it? Well, I guess I'd ask my kid what the issue is. And excluding how? Like not playing with them or something? I mean, some people just don't like other people just because, you know, if one kid's mean to you or something. So not a very good question.
You know, I think one that depends on what age they are. So I would say in general, I think if we really think about this deeply.
Well, here's the other thing too, and just before he answers, there is no moral imperative to include everyone at all times in all things. Right? I mean, I went to school with a lot of kids, but I didn't make best friends with all of the kids. I didn't spend inordinate amount of times with all the kids. And as I think back, out of the several different classes and classrooms in my growing up, I could probably name maybe a handful of kids that I came to know well enough that I remember their names now. So I would need more details personally on this, because I wouldn't like force my kid to socialize with another kid just because they're not socializing with that other kid. Now, if the basis for that, you know, aversion to socialization is based on something stupid, yeah, okay, we might talk about that.
It's human nature to kind of want to be with people who are similar to you.
They didn't even. What is the difference involved here?
And we see that play out in a lot of things as adults as well.
Yeah, and if you start off by telling your kid preemptively to pay attention to difference, you think that might not feed into that a little bit? If you make difference something that's supposed to be overthought and something to be avoided because it's too complicated, that they might tend to you know, congregate with people who look the same or whatever. Oh my God. Thank you, Zero Depressive again. I know you're excluding someone, Billy. You racist. Spill it. Mommy loves you.
And so I think for a younger child, you know, I honestly think that's pretty normal
Yes.
behavior.
Yeah.
And just to, bringing that up is okay, but I wouldn't be like very, upset with the person or the child, because I think that is pretty normal behavior to kind of want to be with a certain group of people.
Demographic, I think you're talking about, but then we don't know what we're talking about because this is such a vague question. How are you supposed to answer it?
Or be, scared of things that they don't know anything about.
Or that you've spent so much time hyping up that someone's going to become paranoid about either bringing it up or interacting with it, right? Like hair type or skin color or whatever.
Or are different. One of the techniques.
I would love it if you have a preemptive talk with your kid about, just because someone has different hair than you doesn't mean that they're a bad person. And the little kid goes to school and goes up to some kid with different hair than him and says, I don't think you're a bad person because of your hair.
We use, or I teach is kind of doing some exposure type, I don't want to say therapy, but exposure type experiential.
I don't want to say therapy. I don't want to say, I'm practicing sort of therapeutic psychology on my own children, or recommending that you do too, since I'm a sports medicine doctor and not a psychologist.
Things. So, if there's things that you can volunteer for at the school or outside of the school that may expose your child to lots of different type of people, that may be helpful in getting them a little bit more accustomed and used to children of other backgrounds, that have the differences.
The kids in their class, the kids in other classes in different grades. I mean, I guess it depends on the size of the school, but you're going to come across kids of all types. And not just the types of skin color or hair color, types of people, behavior, situations. You whittle it all down to aesthetics, and you're contributing to the problem. It's about character. It's about merit. It's about how you treat others and how you treat yourself. That's where the differences in people really matter.
That you may be wanting to focus on. But I think sometimes, trying to figure out what the reason is, because it may be,
imagine that,
not because the person is doing that with malicious intent. And
it might not be that your kid is automatically a racist because you've decided that since they're not playing with that kid and you can see the differences between the kid, that obviously that kid must be avoiding that other kid because of X, Y, Z. Yeah, you're not projecting anything, I'm sure.
And more so that they're doing that because they just don't know how to interact with that person.
Or maybe they don't want to, and they don't have to. You don't force kids to interact with one another.
And the easiest way is just to kind of push them away, or just hang with a group that they feel most comfortable with. So I think challenging their environment a little bit is a good option. Whether that be through some volunteering things where that you'll be interacting with some folks who may be different, or
different how? What do you mean? Everyone is different. What are you talking about?
Seeking those out, at school as well. I think that would be a good option.
That answered nothing. I mean, admittedly, the question was not very well framed, and he tried to answer it the best he could. But if you're going to start throwing out advice, or here's an idea, if the question isn't really well formed, ask for clarification, ask for specificity. Don't just be, flailing around trying to give an answer to a bad question.
A second question here is, I try to get my child to talk with me more about recognizing differences and what's in the news, but I don't get much participation from him.
Oh gosh, he doesn't care. It's not important to him. I'd love to know the age of the kid, but yeah, imagine that. Like interrogating your 6-year-old on world events. They care about their toys and their video games. That's it. Come on.
How do I encourage him to be more talkative when I ask curious questions like you mentioned?
Oh, yeah. Okay. What's your advice? What's your advice to get I'm assuming, small child to interact with me on subjects that have absolutely no interest to them whatsoever?
So I'm so happy to hear this question because that's my experience too with my 13-year-old. She's 13 today.
Yeah.
And so we have like a 10-minute drive to the bus stop.
Yeah.
And that's where kind of I take advantage and try to ask some questions and just kind of feel out, what's going on at school.
Yeah. Well, you usually ask these things when the kid comes home, but okay, how was school today? What are you learning? Did you make any new friends?
And, I think that she rides and says, well, I just like to look out the window. And so,
because it's the early morning and the kid's waking up and they're not ready to start thinking and they have to go to school. You do this stuff after they get home, after they're awake and they've done something and they have something to share. On the way to school, 10 minutes to the bus stop. I mean, the kid's probably still like, I want to go back to bed. Is that really the best time to start querying your kid about the larger issues of life?
Some of the days really aren't very useful conversation, and some are. So I would say one is just to encourage you and applaud you for even making that effort.
Yes, gosh, I mean, what a Herculean effort it is to ask your kid how their school day was.
One of the things that I've tried to do is start with a topic that really isn't, some newsworthy thing.
How about asking your kid what is relevant to them in the moment? What are they interested in? Rather than injecting something in there that you find important, why don't you ask them, what did you learn in school today? Or what are you interested in right now? What do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Get interested in what your kid is interested in and build off of that if you have to, right? Make them the center of the conversation, not your need to inject into the conversation topics that they might not actually care about. How about that? Am I completely off my rocker here?
Or something about, diversity or inclusion, like not trying to make the teaching point right away.
Yeah, no, you want to sneak it in there. You want to sneak that teaching point in there. You want to sneak that agenda-driven subject matter in there. You just want to Trojan horse that shit, right? Good gravy.
What I've tried to do, so my daughter's really into horses.
Oh, okay, there you go. Your daughter's into horses. Speaking of okay, so how are you going to Trojan horse diversity and inclusion into horsies?
And so what I try to do is, ask her like some questions about, like, she likes these little vet shows and horses. And so I ask some questions about that and just kind of get her warmed up into conversation. And then just kind of like by the way, I saw this thing, do you know anything about that? And, sometimes it works. And then
you use horses and veterinary shows as a segue for your social agenda. That is so poetically perfect. I don't know what else to tell you. That's amazing, dude. And your obvious discomfort in having to confess this says miles more than anything you've said thus far. Almost apologetic that you have to take this opportunity that unfortunately I have to use horses to try to talk about diversity and inclusion. This is the most educational moment of this entire broadcast. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit because I got to hear that again. I just got to hear that again.
Thing about, diversity or inclusion, like not trying to make the teaching point right away. What I've tried to do, so my daughter's really into horses, and so what I try to do is, ask her like some questions about, like, she likes these little vet shows and horses, and so I ask some questions about that and just kind of get her warmed up into conversation, and then just kind of like by the way, I saw this thing, do you know anything about that? And sometimes it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. But I would say it is not abnormal to just kind of shy away from those conversations.
Yeah, especially when they are 100% irrelevant. And if you start engaging with your kid and all like, yeah, horses are cool. Hey, how about this thing? Can you imagine the effect it's going to have on your kid when they start to realize, and it won't take long, that you're being disingenuous, that you don't actually care about what they're interested in, that you're more engaged and focused on what you're interested in? Can you imagine that? Because kids are not stupid. They are going to pick up real quick that you're just talking about them or talking with them about horses to warm them up. They're going to get it, and it's not going to work. And you're not going to establish a very good rapport with your kid, because every time in the future that you decide to engage with them on a subject that they're interested in, they are going to suspect that you don't mean it.
As kids. And sometimes she's like, well, why are you asking me these questions?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, why? I want to talk about horses. Why are you asking me about Black Lives Matter and pronouns?
I'm just like, I'm just making conversation.
No, you're inserting an agenda. Come on, don't lie. Don't lie to your kid. I mean, if your daughter sees this broadcast, are you kidding me? Come on.
And so I think that's one, normal, and two, the strategy I use is
it's a listen to yourself. Oh, I'm just making conversation. No, it's a strategy. You're strategizing. Sorry. My brain. You're strategizing your daughter using horses as a delivery mechanism for your agenda. Come on, listen to yourself. Does this sound healthy? Does this sound beneficial? Is this going to improve a relationship between a parent and a child? Come on.
Is trying to kind of warm them up on a topic. So you have to be familiar, though, with a topic that they're interested in. So,
but okay, all right. Well, tell me. I would love to know. I would love to be the fly on the wall to hear how our speaker segues from horses and vet shows into whatever subject that he wants to talk about.
So, like, if it's playing video games, then you have to make yourself more familiar with that as well.
Oh my gosh! Actually, get involved in what your kid is interested in order to relate to them and have a connection. God, what a shocker! What an amazing thing! And what did you do?
And so I think just kind of being able to start that conversation and then kind of pivoting to something once you've got their attention.
Strategizing your child into the subjects you want to talk about.
Is the strategy that I like to use.
Rather than engage with your child on a regular basis and address things as they come up or as they become interesting to the child, no, you've got to constantly use their interests as a leverage point to push in what you want to discuss. Okay, I am not a pediatric psychologist. I am not a parent. Maybe I'm just living in la la land. I don't know. But that doesn't sound like either a productive or healthy way to engage with your child. Again, maybe that's just me. If you have a differing opinion, by all means, leave a comment.
Another question is, my kid feels left out a lot. How do I help them feel more included?
In what circumstance? Like at home, at school, what?
I think that this is a very tough situation.
What situation? They gave you no information, man. You can pass these questions, right? Or at the very least, I guess, use that question as a basis for giving an example specifically. That is not a good question. It is a terribly phrased question. It gives you nothing to grab onto. As much as I want speakers in these presentations to give examples of what they're talking about, just as a word to the wise, if you're asking a question about what someone's talking about, don't leave too many vague points in there if specificity is necessary. Especially when we're talking about this. How should a parent react to X situation? Give some details.
Especially as you get older, I think it's easier to kind of bridge that gap.
No, we're not talking about getting older. We're talking about how do you talk to your kids about D and I?
When your children are younger, not that it's easy in general, but I think, as kind of cliques and groups and social groups kind of form more tightly as children age, I think it can be very, very difficult. So I want to...
Growing up can be difficult. Socializing with your peers can be difficult. Cliques and groups in school can cause tension and difficulty. You don't say. Gosh, how did I navigate those experiences myself without having my parents constantly injecting D and I into our conversation? I don't know. I have no idea. It's almost like I had to learn for myself how to navigate my own life and make my own friends. And some things just cannot be cured by even the best parent. Sometimes the kid has to learn on their own, struggle on their own, find solutions on their own, come to realizations about themselves and others on their own. What a concept.
One, acknowledge that can be very difficult.
Yes, it can. Yeah, it can. Every coming of age movie I have ever seen has offered us over the top, yet not necessarily too far off of reality, examples of this. Yes, if you can believe it.
One of the strategies that I've seen for younger kids is really to be if it's possible, and I know everyone has work and things that they can do, but let's say we're talking about school.
You've only been talking about school.
One strategy is to be a little bit more involved in the happenings of school. So like if they need people to volunteer for the classroom and help out at the school, if that's possible, if you don't have to work during the day every day, making it a more comfortable place for your child because they've seen you there and they know that you're sometimes there and can make it a little bit more comfortable.
Or it could become suffocating depending on how you're doing it. I don't know. There's my mother volunteered at our school oftentimes. She'd volunteer for different projects or things. She wasn't there all the time. But yeah, okay. Yeah. Getting involved and paying attention to your child's education. What an idea.
You can kind of get to know some of the other kids in their class or in their social circle and kind of help kind of foster that the relationship between other kids. I think
whoa. So you want the hypothetical parent to volunteer at the school in order to directly monitor and referee the child's social life. I can see no possible issues that might arise out of such a strategy.
If it's a school issue, one of the other strategies is some of these extracurricular type activities where they don't have that preconceived notions and ideas that people have about them at school, you kind of get a clean slate when you're doing a lot of these extracurricular activities. And so may that be, sports, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your traditional sports. So, people think about soccer, baseball, basketball, but, there's a lot of other activities where.
Yeah, there are. I'm sorry. I know I've been very overly critical, but this just sounds like nonsense in the sense that it's one of those things where it's like some of this information should just be available to a person on the basis of having been alive and having grown up to the point of becoming a parent. Do you know that there's extracurricular activities out there that aren't sports? Really? Yeah, I never heard of such things. Like, I don't know, model making, remote control planes, video games, a zillion other things. I mean, okay, I'm at the hour and a half mark, and I'm done. I think this whole thing is 34 minutes, and we've gone through 24. I don't think the next 10 minutes are going to tell me anything more than I haven't already heard, effectively. So I'm going to go over some comments real quick. See what other people here have to say on this. Alyssa doesn't lie. Scribelight. Example. My daughter loves the amazing Dr. Pol. The vet is an old Polish man. How do you feel about the vet being from Poland? Well, Dad, I don't care. I like him because he takes care of horses. Yeah. Yeah. And imagine just on the basis, just going along with our speaker's purported intent, right? And taking that example. Imagine for a moment a child watching someone with an accent doing something that they care about and doing something like taking care of horses, which they love. Wow, that person doesn't sound like me, but they care about the things I care about. Isn't it neat that we share this commonality regardless of the difference between us? Can you imagine such a passive lesson being learned without having to interrogate your child under a hot light about pronouns? Jesus. Thank you, Alyssa. Lexi Mads, my kid feels left out. What do I do? Example. If they've just emigrated and are attending a new school halfway through the year and the kids find them not a novelty for 2 weeks, then are no longer bothered. Yeah. What should I do? Totally not my 13th year of life at all. Yeah, I just 13 years old. I mean, not everything has been answered, but you've lived 13 years and grown up. And this is such a bizarre talk. It's like, this is a talk for people who either have never lived a life of their own or have been parenting their child like a robot up to this point. I don't even know who this is for. Let's see. Anything else on here? Ryan R. I find that horse paste is a better segue than horse shows. These days, you wouldn't be wrong. You wouldn't be wrong. Let's see. Kieverdam says, Spud's 20 minutes behind. Keep the stream going. What? Spud Gun. I'm only 20 minutes back now. Hope he keeps going for a bit longer. Well, by the time you get to this point, Spud, it'll be 20 minutes more than you already have. Spoonie the Rebel, want a palate cleanser? My cooking video will be dropping in 30 minutes. Well, there you go. Spoonie, can you, or if some helpful person can find Spoonie's YouTube channel link, because I don't have it on hand, someone with a wrench who can post these things, put it in the chat there for reference. And so by the time he gets to it, Spud Gun can find Spoonie's channel and go watch the cooking video. Zero Depressive. Maybe this guy is a fan of the motto, nothing like a little child trauma to grow character. Okay, I don't want to classify it as trauma. It's just the most awkward and disingenuous way to try to inject your own interests and priorities into your child's life. I mean, again, it just feels like this is the backwards way to do it. As your kid is exposed to things or asks about things or becomes curious about things, that's when you come in and help and guide and supplement. If they like horses, then like horses too. I mean, is it really that tough? Just like horses. Take them to horse shows. Let them meet other people who are interested in horses. Watch veterinary shows with them about horses and the kinds of people that treat horses. And they will pick up these things on their own. And if they have questions, if they run into difficulties, if you've shown that you have an interest in their life, that you care about what they care about, that you're someone that they can rely on about things, they will come to you with these problems. And if they don't, ask questions, show that you want to know what's going on. No child is going to share everything about their life with their parent. Some things are embarrassing, some things are private, some things they want to keep to themselves. But when it comes down to things that really matter, that are really bothering them, or that they're really curious about, if they know that you're someone that they can rely upon for a straight answer, they're more likely to come to you with that. If you approach your child with a strategy to insert subject matter into things that they're interested in artificially, if you think about talking to your kid as getting them warmed up for what you're interested in, I don't think that is a healthy way to go about it. But that's just my opinion. But with that, everyone, I'm going to call it here. We're at the hour-and-a-half point, and I don't want to tarry, I should say, any further. Sorry, Spud Gun. But thank you all for joining me this morning. I hope we all learned something, or in the negative space of the conversation, learned something about what not to do, depending on how you look at it. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I will take a look at off-brand TED Talks. And this upcoming week, I have to confirm, I may have a special guest as a wingman for TEDx, so keep an eye out for that. Follow me on Twitter if you want to know more. And be sure to check out the GoFundMe up at the top of the chat window for his kitten. Our friend needs some help. If you have it, please think about donating. And with that, everyone. Oh, Angela Arriaga. Hello. Didn't see you there. Want to say hello. With that, everyone, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for your attention and your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do, at least until the Russian bots show up. And with that, I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Hope you have a good day off for those of you that have Monday off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye-bye.